A while back, we covered an incident where a man jumped from the bullet train in 2002 and then seemingly disappeared after landing on the station platform. This week, we're looking at yet another similar incident, but this time, the other way around. A woman who apparently jumped from the platform but then vanished into thin air, despite numerous people seeing her jump. What really happened? Did a woman truly jump in front of a moving train but then simply disappear? Let's take a look. On October 16th, 1996, a train was pulling into Okachimachi Station on the Yamanote line around 5:26 p.m. when the driver suddenly slammed on the brakes. Voices rang out from the platform. Someone jumped! The train hit something! A man eating and chatting with his wife just a short distance away reportedly saw a woman who looked like an office worker run to the edge of the platform. He thought she was simply rushing to get on the train, but then he heard the emergency brakes. Considering everything that had just happened in such a short period of time, those on the platform naturally assumed that someone had just jumped in front of the train. Station staff then rushed over with vinyl sheets, and other staff members wearing helmets checked under the train for signs of the woman who had apparently just been hit. The station then announced there had been a collision and they were currently checking the tracks. Police also showed up to take eyewitness reports, and the woman who was seen jumping onto the tracks was said to be around 24 or 25 years old, had a bob haircut, and was wearing greyish clothes. The train driver also reported witnessing someone jump in front of the train, which was why he slammed on the brakes. According to him, however, the woman was wearing blue. I don't think she fell under the platform, he reportedly said. Yet no matter where they looked, no body was ever found. If a woman really had jumped onto the tracks like numerous people had reportedly seen, then it appeared she had vanished into thin air. There were no signs on either the train nor the tracks that anyone or even anything had been hit. No blood, no damage, nothing. 18 minutes after the train stopped, things started moving again, and that was that. Despite numerous eyewitnesses, there was no evidence that anyone had actually jumped, and thus there was nothing anyone could do. It was a mystery. Of course, some people immediately claimed it had to be a ghost. Numerous stations throughout the country are thought to be haunted after all, and in Tokyo in particular, where so many incidents happen each and every year. How else could you explain a woman jumping in front of the train and then disappearing like that? This incident was so bizarre that even the media reported on it, and magazines at the time also had a field day with it. What a perfect story. A busy train station in Tokyo at the end of the workday. A woman seen by numerous people, including the driver, jumping onto the train tracks. A station-wide announcement and police investigating the area. And yet, nothing. No signs of anything anywhere. The story sold itself. And technically, that's the end of the story. There was no body or even accident, so there was no case to investigate. The train resumed 18 minutes later and officially it was over. Of course, that didn't mean it was over for those who saw what happened, or those who heard about it after. On the contrary, it was just the beginning. How could this woman, seen by so many people, be explained? If you want to go the supernatural route, then sure, a ghost is by far the easiest answer. You don't need much explaining there. Later reports even mentioned the woman having a strangely long neck and big head. If she was a ghost, then we don't need to look much further. But not everyone believes in ghosts, so how could this be rationally explained? If we assume that everyone was telling the truth, and that a woman really did jump in front of the train, how can we reconcile that with the fact that the train never hit anything, nor was there any evidence of impact? Well, despite the driver claiming that he didn't think she went under the platform, naturally, this is a very large possibility. numerous people over the years have fallen or jumped onto the tracks and narrowly avoided being hit by hiding in the small gap. If we look closely at the Okachimachi tracks, we can see the space beneath the platform isn't very large, but there are some sections that are open. It is a possibility, although indeed a slim one. This also doesn't explain how nobody was able to find her after the train stopped. The driver presumably still had his eyes on the tracks, and several people on the platform were also looking in that direction. If she hid in the gap beneath the platform, then got out and ran off after the train stopped, surely at least one person would have seen her. Yet not a single witness came forward and said they did. We can't entirely rule it out, but it does seem a little unlikely. On a similar note, it's possible that a woman did fall onto the tracks, and as the train driver slammed on the brakes, she simply climbed back up onto the platform. Again, it's odd that nobody saw this, but it's not entirely impossible. Just unlikely. At 5:30 in the afternoon, train stations in Tokyo are generally packed with people, particularly those on the Yamanote line. So it is possible she simply disappeared into the crowd again, perhaps embarrassed that she fell and slinking off into the crowd so she didn't have to deal with what happened. Perhaps the most likely explanation, however, is that everyone simply didn't see what they thought they saw. It's true that the train driver thought he saw something. According to him, it looked like a woman in blue. We don't know how long the driver had been working for, but particularly in the mid to late 90s, Japanese train drivers were known to be quite overworked. On occasion, this led to unfortunate accidents. Maybe he was simply tired, exhausted, or just not entirely focused on what was ahead of him. And for the briefest of moments, he thought he saw someone jump in front of the train. It certainly wouldn't be the first time in history. When we look at eyewitness reports from those on the platform, we also have just one man saying he saw a woman in grey. It's possible to confuse blue and grey, sure, but it's also another sign that perhaps everyone saw something a little different, because again, there was no woman. The tired train driver may have seen something that, to his eye, looked like a woman, and he slammed on the brakes. Then the people on the platform, hearing the emergency brakes kick in, may have seen someone near the edge of the platform. Perhaps the person who screamed, "Somebody jumped!" didn't actually see anyone jump, but assumed that because of the train. Then other people saw people near the edge and put two and two together. This way, we can explain the discrepancies in what people saw, but also why no woman was ever found. Because she didn't exist. Everyone saw something different that, from their point of view, pointed towards someone jumping on the tracks, even though that never actually happened. Nearly 3 decades have passed since this accident, so we're unlikely to ever get a definitive, official explanation for what happened. But even now, people are still talking about what happened and trying to explain all the pieces that don't fit neatly together. Did a woman really jump in front of a train and then disappear? Was it a ghost? Or was there simply no woman at all? What do you guys think about this one? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.